So hello everyone, welcome to the UN LEA webinar number 2. My name is Risa, and then I am a UNGP Global Focal Point on legal identity issues, and then I support policy formulation and then country support, and I'm your facilitator today. So the topic of today's webinar is digitalization of legal identity system. In the last few years, UN system is receiving an increasing number of requests from our member states to support the digitalization effort of their civil registration, vital statistics, and an ID management system. Digitalization has a lot of advantages, such as enhancing efficiency of the CRBS and ID management services, improving access to public services, and which will potentially lead to closing the global identity gap. However, as we all know, the process of digitalization needs to address various complicated considerations, such as legal framework, design and implementation of the software solutions, capacity building of the local stakeholders, procurement, governance framework, and more. So today, we shall focus on the issue of software solution and procurement, and provide overall guidance on what consideration needs to be addressed when the UN is requested by the government counterparts to digitalize their legal identity system, how to design and deploy software solutions, and then how to ensure sustainable and value for money procurement. The webinar has 3 parts: presentation by UNDP Digital Governance and Innovation Team, DIGIT team, on the overall guidance, and briefing from UNICEF on their recent analysis on different software solutions around legal identity, and showcasing 3 country examples: India, Vanuatu, and Mali. Without further ado, I will hand over to UNDP DIGIT team. So over to you, Shaheen and Victor, for your presentation.
So, hi everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks for attending. So, what we're presenting here is usually very recurring issues that we deal with when we procure this type of ID tech system, and on a very high level, all different ID related processes. And when I say ID related, I'm covering any type of functional ID, meaning civil registration, national legal ID, even driving licenses or passports, for example. On a very high level, the typical processes of collecting and processing population data looks very similar. So we may be misled into believing that we could get some sort of Microsoft Office-like software that deals with these types of processes. However, the devil is really in the details. So we're talking here about compliance markets. Compliance markets are basically those markets where you have to abide by certain norms or rules. You cannot just apply the same legal ID system for a passport and for a CRBS, or you can't apply the same CRBS system between country A and country B. Both have very different legislations. They have very different operations. They have very different political setups and institutional architecture. Sometimes national ID is a card is issued by the civil registration authority. Sometimes these are 2 separate authorities. Sometimes you do have linkages with the elections. Sometimes you don't. So no 2 institutions and no 2 countries have the same regulatory framework. They don't have the same operational framework. Sometimes you do have cost efficiencies that come from the fact that you have an efficient digital infrastructure. Sometimes you have to take into account the fact that you're working on a very weak digital infrastructure, and these will impact the type of software that you have and the type of compliance you have to abide by. So it's very important that to keep in mind that when we're talking about CRBS systems, even though the different the processes look similar, they're in fact very, very different. And any system that is being deployed for the purpose of any type of functional ID will require heavy customization. Bottom line is, there's no point. These types of projects are software development projects. They're not simply buying some off-the-shelf component projects. So when it comes to software development, we have to understand that these are complex engineering processes. They're not something that happens just, again, it's not about going and buying a box from Walmart, right? It's really a very complex manufacturing process that is organized into an industry that is the industry of IT development. And the typical life cycle at a very, very high level of development software goes through some variation of these 6 to 8 steps. Usually there's represented in 6 to 8 steps. Here, the one I'm presenting is composed of 7 steps. You start with the ideation, where typically you would call that the needs analysis and what you would do. You understand what the problem you're solving is, what the need you're addressing. Then you move to requirements, meaning you design the processes, you design the solution, then you actually start coding after you've done all that. Then you test the code, you control the quality, then you deploy it, put it in operation, and maintenance is part of the operation. Then you repeat that cycle. So I was mentioning that the first step in this is basically ideation and requirements, right? So we're talking about the identification of the problem we're solving, typically in legal identity. That could be the digitalization of paper books, that could be cleaning up data for legacy system, it could be interoperability, et cetera. There are many different types of problems that we solve in this setup. And then we also need to map the processes, meaning we need to understand in that specific institutional context, in that specific regulatory and operational context, what are the processes that we're digitizing. So the starting point really is the processes. For example, just to give a very concrete and simple example, if we're going to register a baby in civil registry, registering a baby that's born in a clinic is not the same as registering a baby who we found under a tree. Registering a baby with one foreign parent is not the same as registering a baby with 2 nationals. And we need to define the processes by which they need to go through, the papers, the approvals, the different steps of conducting such a, going from the application for a birth record to an actual birth record saved in a ledger, whether electronic or paper, but it's still about defining processes. Once these processes are defined, we can then move to the next step.
Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Victor. I am procurement specialist in UNDP, basically focused on elections, identity, and technology procurement, and part, of course, of the Digit initiative. And continuing with Shaheen's presentation, exactly after the mapping of the processes is conducted, which is already a very intensive and expertise demanding process, and it comes also quite labor intensive and important in terms of also resources, process of translating all those processes into software processes, how software will automatize those processes. As Shaheen was mentioning, there is no magic solution. There is no solution that will be off the shelf and addressing fully all those processes defined. And just to emphasize how important is that the processes are actually defined by the experts in the subject matter. It cannot be, it will never go right if it's the legal identity regulations and legal identity processes following technology. It should go the other way around. It's always should be those processes and regulations and rules, normatives being defined by the experts, and then technology adapting, seeing how technology supports them. So this requires, as it's indicated here, quite advanced skill sets in terms of developing that software. It needs to be fully customized, needs to respect and adapt to the properly defined processes. And then that's what it comes because of timelines, because of the effort that this requires. That sometimes it comes the question whether we should internally develop, make, or buy, externalize, contract that software development services or software customization services. Make or buy, that's the decision. In any case, I think that the main aspect to emphasize here is how critical is going to be the technical expertise at the receiving entity side, being the client or the procuring agent, etc., but the one that is responsible of sourcing those services, either internalizing them, developing internally, or externalizing, outsourcing. How critical is going to be the technical capacity and the technical and project management dedication to the contract management or to the development. In any case, whether we do it internally or we outsource, the receiving entity, the client entity, needs to have very strong and comprehensive follow-up of the activities and be ready to intervene and to provide continuous inputs. In terms of procurement, I could extend this a lot, but I know that we are very, very time compressed. I would just want to highlight a few aspects about procurement. What are we trying to do in procurement? For the most, we are trying to avoid and manage risks. A lot of the process of procurement has to do with risk management. Major risks we want to avoid is vendor lock, for example. Shaheen will explain a little bit more later on this, but vendor locks can come from many different sides. It can be a technical vendor lock, it can be a license-based vendor lock, it can be a proprietary sort of solution, or even in some cases we have seen the sad situation where the actual supplier is the owner of the data, which is like a complete wrong and unwished situation, that the country organization, the country institutions depend on a supplier in order to access the data of their own citizens. Another risk can be, and vendor lock can be avoided. I mean, this is the good news. It can be effectively avoided, and even it can be actually a reason why we would choose one way of implementing or another. Other risks that we want to avoid, definitely non-satisfactory results, bad performance of the either internal or the external team, delays and disorganized implementation. In other words, lack of planning. And also, another very important risk is the exaggerated or hidden increasing costs that leads to total economic inefficiency. So that's why it's the importance also in procurement of considering the total cost of ownership. This is a quite long concept to explain here in few words, but I believe that you all understand the overall idea. The only thing is that with software development projects, you need to be aware that this is very, very, very much a quite common issue, where new developments, hence maybe sometimes from bad planning or need of additional resources, sometimes again about bad planning or because of changing requirements, may lead to additional cost, maintenance cost, etc. Many of these costs can be addressed. Some others maybe need to be managed on ad hoc basis. In procurement, there are a number of principles that are general. In this case, applying to this type of projects, definitely we should seek for effective competition where possible in order to address the above risks. Transparency, fairness, accountability, integrity, best value for money. I'm adding here as a subset of value for money, the sustainability. And I would like actually to just in one sentence emphasize the importance of sustainability, which has to do definitely with the objectives of our organization and our organizations in terms of implementing projects. We want to make them sustainable, durable, feasible, and adaptable for the future. And we also want that this is all considered under the total cost of ownership, best value for money being guaranteed in that manner. The required process will highly depend on the volumes, the scope, and the risks that need to be addressed. And in any case, it's going to be crucial because sometimes the scope may not be easily defined from the start. So in order to work with implementing company or the developing company or the developing team, in a good achieving a good result, it's crucial that we are dealing with a highly qualified or adequately qualified team. That's crucial in terms of the procurement process, and also as much as possible defining the requirements. Technical expertise is going to be needed from A to Z, and that's actually the last point. I mean, sometimes when we think about procurement, we think about the act of conducting the contracting or conducting the solicitation and contracting, and that's not, no. Procurement starts with the early definition of the needs and the solutions needed, planning in terms of timelines, planning in terms of implementation and resources, then conducting the procurement process itself, which is solicitation, evaluation of offers, etc., until we contract, and then the whole period of contract management. For all that, technical expertise needs to accompany and be involved through the whole process in order to guarantee the results. I would give the word back to Shaheen.
So we chose to highlight three very common issues. There are many, as Victor was describing. There are quite. These types of projects are rather quite complex technically and require different types of specialties to work together to ensure they are successful. So three types, very common recurring points or questions or issues that come in different digitalization projects related to legal identity. The first one is currently the approach to open source, which sometimes is a little bit candid, and we want to bring some more in-depth understanding of what open source means and what it implies. First, let's be clear that 90% of software, even proprietary software, when you buy a Microsoft product, is made in 90% of its code is made of actual open source software. So it's not like it's not being for or against open source. Open source is pervasive, it's everywhere, and it's important. However, as a government, you cannot rely on some sort of theoretical community to just magically maintain a system for you. Open source is made of different branches. You will have, as we mentioned before, you need to customize your system for your own needs with the processes. And as you can see here, you would typically have the master. He would represent the public branch, open source. You could have your own custom system that branches off. And that difference between the different, the open source version that's being maintained and the one you have customized for yourself could be even a few lines. Usually it's more than that, but it could be a few lines within millions to ensure compliance with your own processes and regulations. And that takes expertise, deep expertise to maintain. So we're very tight in time, and this is a really deep topic, but I would also like to say very shortly, it is important to understand that open source requires technical expertise. It is also probably a business model for many companies actually to hook clients and bias the market. So instead of saying, you know what, from the get-go, I'm a proprietary system, I'll put a bit of my software in open source, and in order for you to get any actual valuable feature, you would need to come and contract me for the development services. So it is actually very much a business model. We can't just hope that first open source changes in the master branch will magically reflect in my development branch, for example. Two, we can't hope that actually a vendor with a business open source business model will actually be more competitive than a vendor with, for example, a SaaS or a proprietary license model. And there are many economic models around this, but as I said, we're very short on time. I'll just move to the next one here. Victor mentioned already most of the issues here on procurement side, value for money and switching costs for vendor locks. I'll just switch it for the sake of time. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, but it's very, very important to understand that we have contract management issues, we have technical issues, creating high switching costs, which is a way by which you lock a government into as a customer, there are many tactics here. There are economic tactics, there are technical tactics, there are legal tactics, there are technological tactics, and you can create them from all sorts of perspectives. So you need that team of experts who know how to ensure that when you get value for money, you get you don't end up locked with a given vendor. Another very common point that comes in these digitalization projects is the belief that you can rely on a vendor to actually implement a project for you, a software vendor. Well, a successful legal identity project, and again here by legal identity, I mean any type of functional ID project is something that has many areas. Among them, you sometimes have to provide support in terms of legal reform. Sometimes you have to support operations, training of thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of people, etc. There are many areas to provide, and sometimes it is highly politically sensitive. So relying on a software vendor to actually implement a CRVS project on your behalf, for example, or a national ID cards project on your behalf is like relying on your medical equipment provider to do surgery on your behalf. A medical equipment provider is expert at providing medical equipment, not at conducting surgery. So it's very important to also understand that we as UN agencies keep control of these projects, keep control of the expertise of implementing these projects, because that's where we are experts. And that software vendors are actually experts at providing software, regardless of whether we buy or procure or make the software. So there are other principles that are important in terms of implementations, but Risa is already signaling that it's the end of my time. So we can talk about it in more details later. Thanks, Risa.
Thank you so much, Jackie and Victor, and sorry to rush you guys out, but it's really important that we move and cover different topics. So now I'd like to hand it over to Bhaskar to present a recent analysis on different software solutions around legal identity. So Bhaskar, floor is yours.
Hi, so thanks, Risa, and thanks, Victor and Sahin, for a very insightful presentation. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. My name is Bhaskar Mishra, and I am the Global Technical Lead on CRBS and Legal Identity, working with UNICEF headquarters. This is a presentation on landscape analysis of digital CRBS solutions that UNICEF commissioned in 2022. And the basic idea was to identify solutions that meet the basic requirements and can be scaled up with some customization. The intention was to avoid fragmentation in the CRBS landscape market, which is already extremely complicated. As many of you would know, UNICEF supports CRBS in close to 80 countries, and therefore there was a need for a vetted, trusted, and reliable solution that can be implemented across countries and settings, including humanitarian settings. So we commissioned a comprehensive assessment and landscape analysis of existing digital solutions to identify solutions that are ready for implementation and in line with international requirements and standards. The assessment was done by a third party under close supervision and guidance of UNICEF. We focused on solutions that are available in the market for deployment, and the assessment covered open source and proprietary solutions. Please note that homegrown and country-specific solutions were not included. We mostly relied on self-reported information and details and validated them through live demo using 11 use cases. The first phase of analysis was conducted in 2022, and the in-depth data privacy and security assessment of recommended solution is currently going on, and the report is likely to be available in Q4 of 2023. So the evaluation was done in 6 steps, as you can see. After the initial desk research and consultations, 15 solutions were identified. Vendors were asked to report against a set of functional and non-functional requirements that we will discuss in subsequent slides. And 7 vendors responded and their solutions were analyzed. Live demos were done to validate their responses, and 6 vendors participated in live demos. Maturity analysis of these 6 solutions was done using an adaptation from the Digital Square Global Goods Maturity Model. Then a SWOT analysis of these solutions was done as a summary of steps 2 to 4. Finally, 5 solutions have been shortlisted or recommended. The report containing the key findings will be released next week. Sorry, it got delayed. It was supposed to be released last month. The data privacy and security assessment will be released Q4 of this year. Solutions were assessed against 110 requirements. There were 12 categories of functional requirements covering all critical steps required for civil registration, followed by 20 categories of non-functional requirements The report contains the details of these requirements. We also plan to publish them separately. The requirements were assigned weight based on importance, and there were 3 categories: good to have, optional, mandatory, and accordingly, they were combined to have a unique score. For maturity analysis, 20 indicators were used. They covered different areas. For example, scalability, country utilization, openness to total cost of ownership, governance and leadership, security and privacy to software roadmap. The report also contains details of the maturity model. So in terms of key findings, the market is fragmented with no clearly recommended solution. There is no CRBS digital solution that has reached high adoption rates across a range of countries. Even the total cost of ownership widely varied between less than 300,000 to more than 60 million. This could also be because of, vendors, they did not understand the requirements, completely. 3 of the shortlisted solutions cannot comply with offline requirements, which limits their applicability in low and middle income countries, especially Africa and South Asia. Implementation of interoperability or data standards between CRBS and other systems. As you know, CRBS cannot work in isolation, they need to talk to health and national ID at least, was also inconsistent. Security considerations were also not consistently implemented across most countries. So in terms of recommended solutions, please note that these solutions have been, produced in alphabetical order, it has nothing to do with in terms of their ranking. So as you know, DGIT is an integrated CRBS and national ID platform built by UNDP. We have Sahin and Victor here, who are the main developers. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to them. I'm not reading out the strengths and weaknesses. The report covers them. In terms of country deployment, it is operational in Malawi and Nepal for the national ID part. And it is in production or pilot stages, in Honduras, Guinea-Bissau, and other countries. DHIS2, most of you know that DHIS2 is a robust open source web-based platform for data collection management and analysis. More than 80 countries use it for health management information system. DHIS2 is also used by other sectors like education. Liberia has developed a birth and death registration system using DHIS2, and which is currently in operation. Evelyn is a proprietary package developed by Digitech to meet the demand for vital records and statistics management. It has a software suite fully dedicated to CRBS. It is operational in Ivory Coast, Niger, Mali, Republic of Congo, and France. An ongoing implementation is in Senegal and Tunisia. OpenCRBS is an open source standard-based software for civil registration. It is a DPG. DHIS2 was also a DPG. It was piloted in Bangladesh, Niue, and is under field testing in Nigeria. And finally, WCC HERA is a proprietary CRBS solution for birth, death, and marriage registration. Is delivered ready to use, pre-configured to meet international best practices and country-specific requirements. It is under implementation in Gambia and Laos. So this is one software which is under implementation throughout the country in Gambia and Laos. Next slide, please. So Risa, I think before I conclude, please note that the report's findings are indicative in nature and requires further scrutiny and validation. So when you engage with, when you look for a particular vendor, you need to get more information. We have further details and that can be provided on demand. Thanks, Risa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhaskar, for your presentation. I'm very much looking forward to reading the detailed report when it's launched. So now we would like to move to our country section. There we have India, Vanuatu, and Mali. And then the first presentation is by India. So Piyush, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so having listened to the earlier presenters, I'm happy that I can skip some slides because they have given enough background and context to it. So I'm here to present how the existing civil registration system is leveraged with another existing system, which is the unique identity, which is called Aadhaar for the newborns in Uttar Pradesh. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as we have already discussed, there is the issue of citizenship, unique ID, and birth registration. As I have already mentioned or dropped the word Aadhaar, which means foundation in Hindi, it was launched in 2009. It was supported by an act, and it's a unique 12-digit identity number, which includes biometrically verifiable fingerprints, iris scans for every citizen. And it was based on this, every citizen receives a card with this unique number, and it can be cross-referenced with biometric data held in the database of Aadhaar. And when it comes to citizenship, it is as per the Citizenship Act of 1955, and Section 3 allows for citizenship by birth, and birth certificate serves as a legal document of proof. Another act which is relevant in this context is that we have Registration of Birth and Death Act 1969, which makes birth registration compulsory for all. However, many states in India are yet to make the system very robust for compulsory birth registration. So I represent Uttar Pradesh, the largest state in India with 240 million population. What has been the issue with this largest state is that we have had multiple portals for birth registration. Though at the national level, we had the CRS portal, we had multiple portals. And because of the huge size of the state, there were fake birth registration sites. Duplicate birth registrations were there due to lack of uniqueness. And because of all this, the state was also ranked among the states with low birth registration. For example, in 2016, it was only 60%. And if you look at the birth registration units, we had 59,000 rural local bodies, 17 municipal corporations, 200 municipalities, 540. It's a huge number. We have 75 districts. So this is the complex scenario in which we started our journey. So the CRS civil registration system portal was existing, and then we had the Aadhaar, which is the unique ID portal. The first level of data integration was between CRS portal and the unique ID. The advantage is that Aadhaar, which is linked to all the cash transfers for social protection programs, are high popularity compared to birth certificate. As you can see, it has around 102% of coverage among adults, but among 0 to 5 years, it is only below 30% in UP. So by linking Aadhaar and the CRS portal, the backend integration, we had this ALBR, which is Aadhaar linked birth registration, which is adopted from another state, which we visited another state and we demonstrated in one of the districts. And that is how we started our journey. So as I mentioned, we did a demonstration in 26 government health facilities in Lucknow, which is the capital city of Uttar Pradesh. Then this demonstration identified major gaps. Based on that, we prepared a detailed project proposal and submitted to the Aadhaar Authority. And Aadhaar Authority gave us around 0.6 million USD for covering all 75 districts, but in a very phased manner. So the first phase was 8 aspirational districts, which is the 8 backward districts with 100 facilities. And with, good experience of that first phase, we were given the second tranche. We moved to another 15 districts. Now, out of 75 districts, we are covering around 55 districts and 752 health units as of April. Yeah. So in nutshell, what does it show? This is a complex slide, but I'll just run through it. Pregnant women gets admitted. She gives birth. Form 1, which is the CRS portal, which is an informant one, is filled by the concerned registrar. There's a data entry operator. We have used the same data entry operator of the health department. We have not recruited any separate human resources for this purpose. And the birth certificate is created, downloaded from the website with a BRN number. That BRN number is taken to the bedside of the child and linked to the Aadhaar number, the unique ID of one of the parents. Aadhaar is created for the child with the BRN number. And the child's biometric details are not required. It is only authenticated with one of the parents' biometric and the Aadhaar number. So if you look at the birth certificate before ALBR, you can see it was a handwritten one. You can see after Aadhaar linked birth registration, you can see a QR code. It can be downloaded from the website, and it has a unique BRN number as well. How has it helped us? It has reduced the cost, time, and distance for the poor, because birth registration is either given at the place of birth, if it's a government hospital, or if it's in a private hospital, that particular registration unit by the municipality or panchayat, that used to be cumbersome in terms of travel time, in terms of money, though the RBD Act, the Registration of Birth and Death Act, says that it's the first copy of the birth certificate is free. It is seldom the case. And for Aadhaar also, one more day is required. So in all, we have been able to provide Aadhaar, the unique ID, and the birth certificate complete at the bedside of the postnatal ward. No travel involved, all formalities completed before the discharge from the hospital, and no additional cost is involved for the parent. Next slide. So we also, in this process, we know that in India, institutional deliveries are improving, and as part of that, the institutional deliveries are moving towards the private sector. So we also had to develop Aadhaar linked birth registration for the private hospital. We created an informant ID in the civil registration portal for hospitals so that they can get the birth certificate generated through the CRS portal using their informant ID. And we trained a data entry operator nominated by them. We developed a cost recovery model, because every successful Aadhaar and Aadhaar linked birth registration, Aadhaar agency gives ₹50 as an incentive. So that is how we built this model. But some small hospitals are not able to bear the cost of the tablet involved, which we call it ALBR kit. And for the low salary paid for the data entry operator, there were attrition. So we have moved to another model also for the private hospital, which is India Postal Service has trained Aadhaar certifiers. So we are linking these private hospitals to India Post trained certifiers, where on the day of immunization, private hospitals can request the trained Aadhaar persons from the post office to come and give the Aadhaar linked birth registration using their existing tablets. Next slide, please. Okay, so as of now, we started in 2020, and now as of today, we have been able to give around 183,000 Aadhaar linked birth registration in the state. You can see out of 75 districts, we are moving towards completion, and we hope by end of 2023, we will be able to cover all 75 districts. So this being the first level of data integration, civil registration system portal, and the unique ID, we are moving into a second level of, we have moved into a second level of data integration, where the state of Uttar Pradesh has a labor room online MIS, which is called Mantra, which is Mother and Newborn Tracking App, which is when a child is born, the entire details of the child and the mother is a real-time basis. An app is tracked, and we are using this database as the denominator for the health facility. In a month, in a week, X number of children are born. then that many children need to be given. So this mantra is also linked to CRS now. Next slide, please. And from there, the third level and data integration is happening. We are linking it to the health insurance card and the family ID, which completes the loop of data integration for a child, the legal identity, social protection schemes, and birth certificate, Aadhaar, unique ID, and health insurance and all other cash transfer schemes loop is completed. So the data integration that we worked out serves multiple purposes that as I have already explained. So because of this, we have moved to 89% of birth registration, where children are getting unique identity. And we are offering exposure visit to other states. 5 states have already visited. Out of the 5 states, 3 states have started Aadhaar linked birth registration. And I have mentioned 1.83 successfully registered under ALBR as of now in 34 districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Piyush. And it's really wonderful to see such an improvement in closing identity gap in India. Congratulations on your work. I'd like to move now to Vanuatu, which has smaller scale population, but made an agile progress in terms of digital transformation. I'd like to hand over to Kathleen. So over to you, Kathleen, for Vanuatu.
Hello, everybody. So I currently work for the Vanuatu Electoral Environmental Project in Vanuatu. So I just wanted to briefly give everyone a rundown about Vanuatu, just because some people might not have heard of this wonderful country that I live in. But it's an archipelagical and it's made up of 83 smaller islands. About 65 of those are inhabited, but really the mass population is based in about 13 of the islands. It's a Melanesian country that gained independence in July 30th, 1980. There's over 100 indigenous languages spoken, but there's 3 primary government languages being French, English, and Bislama. 75% of the population reside in all the rural areas. And we believe by the end of 2022, there's a birth registration rate of about 92.4%. So it's really good to understand some of the civil registration history. So the main thing is that Vanuatu was dual colonized, or it was a condominium. So it was colonized by British and French. So therefore, all the history and the civil registration identity was divided. So like there's the French and then the British civil registration. But following the independence in 1980, Vanuatu started to manage their own civil registration. So all of our historical records are dated and they all are divided. Even to this day, there's certain people that they only have their French civil registration. And these have been updated and put into one civil registration system, but it's just part of the problems that we faced in duplication of records. So part of the digitization process started in 2002. And this is when an Australian volunteer came and worked with the civil registration and identity management system in Vanuatu, department, sorry. And he helped build the first model. So he made this model for them, and it was based on a hotel management system. And that this system was updated sporadically whenever CRIM, the Civil Registration and Identity Management Department, would come to this man with any new ideas or any new needs. And it was inclusive in its ability to do offline registration, which is really great, especially given the limited digital infrastructure that we have here in Vanuatu. But as the needs and the government the population has grown and expanded, this system can no longer meet all the needs of that civil registration identity management needs, nor can it do some of those historical data record that is really crucial for the ID management component. So how did we as VEEP start working with the Civil Registration and Identity Management Department? We started in 2019. We were brought in because our project is founded in the improving of the electoral environment. But we noticed that one of the main areas that we needed to improve the electoral environment was the strengthening and accuracy of the integrity of the voter registration. So the idea came about that we were going to link that voter registration. It wouldn't be an independent entity, that it would be based on the civil registry. So that'd give it more authenticity, and it would give it just a little bit better background. So what VEEP did in 2019 is that they started to do some joint civil and voter registration on all the islands in Vanuatu, which is a huge endeavor. It may look like a really small country, but it's really hard to get from all the way up to all the way down. And then they also were able to provide a unique national ID number and ID card to every citizen. So just a little bit about the legal foundation that CRIM has. So CRIM has a Civil Registration and Identity Management Act, which was just implemented or just gazetted last year. And we also have the new Vanuatu National Identity Act, which actually, as of today, this was just updated for an amendment, and the Parliament just passed the amendment to include the inclusion of EID. So we're really excited about that, helping to build some of that digital infrastructure for the government. And they also have the Marriage Act, which needs to be updated. Beyond the acts, CRIM also has their regulations, and they have a standard operating procedure, which is the first in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which was signed off in February. And this ensures that registration and vital event registration is standard and that it happens the same no matter what island you are, no matter how far you are away from the capital city. And we also work pretty collaboratively already with a lot of other ministries and departments. For example, we currently have a ministry memorandum of agreement or understanding with the Ministry of Finance and Treasury, the Ministry of Education and Training, and the Ministry of Health. And this is just to provide some more registration points within the country beyond the stations that the department has been able to establish, just because there's such limited staff. So they're able to work with other ministries to provide that point for citizens. So just a brief rundown of this is our current national ID card. And then this is just what the population of national ID or the growth of national ID and people gaining national ID. You'll notice that the number is a little bit higher than what our current population projection is, but this we understand to be due to a lot of duplications. And that this is one of the main things that we've been working on heavily, is trying to eliminate and clean up that database. So this is just a brief, it's not brief, but this is a big overview of the digital ID journey. And a lot of it just started with the government came and said that they wanted to start doing the national ID card, and they wanted to link it with the voter identification with civil registry. So it was basically a big concept and a plan, and then data collection, and then all the people that need to get in the room to make sure that this was possible and that it would be done correctly came together. And then from there, we understood that we had to fine-tune the foundation. So we put through the legislation, the CRIM Act and the National Identity Act, to ensure that there was those legal foundation was there. And then from that, now we are building the new civil registration and identity management system. And we're working on some of those exciting new e-governance services. Yet again, just another overview of some of the good, amazing things that have come out of the digital ID. I guess the biggest thing for us is just that with the national ID card, it can be used just this year. They also passed it. So this is going to be used in place of the Ministry of Health identification number. So everyone now, we're trying to aim for everyone just has one unique ID number, and that's all that they need to remember. And it makes it so it's a cleaner, integrated service for all the government deliveries. So RV5, this is the wonderful joy civil registration and identity management system. We are currently in the process of, in the final stages of getting ready to deploy it with the civil registration and identity management team here. So this is yet again another model that was made specifically for the country. And it was built with support of UNDP VEEP and some wonderful technical man. And this was done with support of other UN agencies. So it began with UNICEF was helping to do a lot of the birth registration to get more of our birth registration numbers up. And then it also was fed in with the UN SCAP, provided a business process mapping and improvement project. And this project was really instrumental in showing the bottlenecks and identifying some of those key areas of wiggle room so that we could make sure that RV5 didn't have the same issues, and that it also, we ensured that some of those things that created inaccurate or messy data, we weren't going to continue to do that in RV5 because we had already found out in RV4 that that was how that people were doing that. So just a couple of the challenges that we faced during this process. the biggest thing, these are the biggest three, but one of them, capacity development. So we really needed to ensure for the long-term sustainability of this project and for identity management in Vanuatu, that there is the correct capacity within the country to maintain this system. So we've gone through a lot of working relationships, and we're doing a lot of capacity development with some of the government entities to ensure that they have the skills that they need. And we're looking at some of those long-term of trying to get some more youth involved in the ICT realm, just to ensure that there is that fresh blood that's coming in that understands how to maintain this kind of a big system. And there's another thing that we faced during this development process was that I'm not sure if some of you guys are aware, but last year our government got hacked. So when the government got hacked, it became apparent that there wasn't as much of the standard backup practices that needed to be happening that wasn't happening. And a lot of the departments relied on a specific government entity to be doing these things. So it was really part of this government hat was a challenge for all of us because we all got offline for like almost 2 months. We didn't have anything. But it also was a great learning experience because it forced everyone to remember that we have to go back to that 3-2-1 data backup. And then we also added in an SOP for data backup, and it secured some of those areas that might not have been secured previously. And one of the other big challenges is just working on the cleaning and the accuracy of that database. So what we ended up doing was we got 19 data verification officers that came in, and they've been working on authenticating, deduplicating, and amending civil records to improve the central registration database, which has been a great journey. These have been wonderful 19 verification officers. They're in their field or they're on the call, on the phone, talking to people in person to ensure that these are the correct records. Okay, so just RV5 for all, just some things to think about when you do a make model. So what has really been awesome about RV5 is it's web-based, so that makes it it's easier to be utilized on any of the remote islands instead of it being our RV4 wasn't web-based. So you had to install the system onto each person's laptop, which was really hard to do in some of our very remote islands. And it also, RV5 is awesome because it's inclusive and it's diverse for the language and culture that is Vanuatu, because Vanuatu has a lot of diverse languages, and it also has a lot of diverse cultural practices. And it allows there to be the different ways to, for example, for marriage. So in Vanuatu, you can get married by civil marriage, you can get a religious marriage, you can be married through custom, you can be married online. So RV5 was able to adapt to all these different variations, and which is really great. It also helps with the diverse country population, especially with our migrant population and the new citizens, and ensuring that we track that historical data. So we have about 20 to 30,000 citizens of Vanuatu that are normally in Australia or New Zealand doing seasonal work. So it's really great. It's needed that the country can say where these people are, but also to do for electoral purposes, we need to know where they've been to, so we can ensure that they're voting in the correct areas. So RV5 does a really good job at tracking that historical data that RV4 was unable to do. And the interoperability with all the other departments, which is awesome, because this is something that RV4 was lacking in, and people had to create a different account. So RV4 has allowed the government to do some more of those interoperability, connecting with the government services. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's really nice that you highlighted the challenges and then risks of digitalization, and then how the project managed to address those. Shaheen, you have your hands up. Do you want to intervene?
Yeah.
Very quickly, please.
Just in few words, just to say that we've since I've been working with closely with Kathleen on the V project. Our VFAB was actually is an example of a Digit deployment. It's been completely built out and customized out of Digit.
Thank you so much, Shaheen. If you have any questions around Digit and UNDP software, please feel free to reach out to us. So now I would like to go to Mali example. So Jan, over to you. And then, yeah, I think you can see your slide now, yeah? But your presentation is in French, but you will deliver your presentation in English. So over to you, Jan.
Don't worry, I will speak in English, even if there is a whole part of the world that speaks French. And that's why I wanted also to have this the slides in French because, you know, we are in West Africa where we have also big English-speaking countries, but mostly French-speaking countries. That means that we have also a low frame techniques, involvement of the European Union, and also a big change over the last 2 years in a movement out of French influence within technique, within materials, within also changes in the probable change in the low frame, and also changes within all what we have in terms of software. So what was our process here in Mali? Since many years, over 2 decades, we were working with RapidPro. RapidPro is providing a declaration of the birth to a central level. But we were not moving at all away from this RapidPro system for birth registration. And it was just a signal given that a child is born. In West Africa, even in the overall region, if we have passed over the last 10 years from 41% of children that are registered under 5 to 51%, here in Mali, we have still 13% of children under 5 that are not registered, and even 22% that are not going to get their birth certificate. Why? Because we are still completely in a manual system. So all is handwritten in registers. Now, what we did is that we had an overall information mission and information gathering mission with at least, and then you see them here, we have at least, and this is the minimum, 12 major partners within the government, the UN, that are working on civil registration. We went also to 2 places on the left, on the right side, communes and hospitals, to see how it works. So, recommendation number 1 of all this mission was that there is an absolute need to go towards electronic governance and also to be aligned with other countries with a worldwide digitalization of civil registration. Unfortunately, in the meantime, you know, we are in a quite unstable region. Many things changed between 2022 and 2023. And especially the French government that was heavily involved in civil registration and that had started dematerializing of 40% of the files is gone. And with the friendship that has left between the local government and the French government, well, will probably not come back soon. That means that still 60% of the actual files that are existing that are not dematerialized. So we decided, nevertheless, to work with the government, and especially the Ministry of Interior, towards the objective of having at least a sort of first step within a plan of digitalization. So what are the objectives and what are also the main problems that we will face? We want quality of data. The law says that within 30 days you need to be registered after birth. If not, you are getting monetary supplement to pay. It's free before 30 days. And many double declarations because civil registration and declaration centers are not really connected, and the time a paper comes from the decentralized level to the centralized level, it can take years now, because we have also some parts of the country where the government cannot access anymore. There is no mechanism of follow-up of the Rapid Pro. Rapid Pro gives a declaration, but nobody will ever go and look if there is something there. Then we have a national identity code. This is what they call NINA. This identity code should be linked with your birth certificate, a unique number. You know, in the French-speaking area, this is absolutely a thing that people want, because it's in line what we have ever learned and always learned with the French way to think on civil registration. There is absolutely right now no security with the data. And there is no dashboard, and there is still 60% of the actual archives that need to be dematerialized. So we have worked with a service provider that many of you know probably. It's CSF, Community System Foundations. They're working with UNICEF since over 2 decades. They have worked in different ways with us when we were creating child info, activity info, and all these information systems. So we will have, and we have presented to the government that really wants to enter a web portal, a web application, an office application, and an Android application. Next slide. You see that there is a whole diagram of the platform that is planned with administrator, with the declaration officer, the civil registration officer, which will also be linked to justice, to the diplomatic missions, and also to other structure of declarations like the judiciary and the penal system. And it will have a link with the national ID that is preliminary and really in particular, as for now, voting ID, a voter number. So these applications will have different modules for notifying the birth declaration, the declaration of birth itself. It will be able to generate the birth certificate. And you know, when you are too late, there is a specific judgment you have to pay for to declare the birth. Then you will have reports, dashboards, research, justice module. This is more in line with all of the laws, and an administrative management tool as well. So this is how it will probably look like on. It's quite practical, huh? On your phone, and so that you can do it everywhere, and it will be also offline registration possible. So we will integrate it with the national ID, and so you see this national ID has a number where you will see the birth, the region where you are born, the district, the village, and automatic sequencing, and this will all be generated from the first moment the declaration will be done. Next. So thank you very much for sure. This is the project. We have a full buy-in of the government, and now we are lobbying with World Bank, with European Union to get it done, because we are, as I said, still at paper level. Over, and for any questions, we are here, and you can also address them in a written way, so that.
Thank you so much, Jan. It's really amazing to see how the country still has a paper record, has like this amazing blueprint to digitalize the whole legal identity system. And then certainly you'd love to see how this digital system will contribute to closing the actual gap in the birth registration and the birth certificate in the future. So thank you so much for your presentation. So with that, I would like to conclude this webinar. Thank you so much for joining. I would like to inform you that this webinar is recorded, and this recording will be available on the UN-LIA website later on, so that anyone who is interested in viewing the previous session, you are also able to do that. So with that, I would like to conclude, and then this is a monthly webinar, so I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next webinar in June. Thank you so much, and then have a lovely rest of the day, or have a lovely rest of the week. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Piers.